Welcome. This video is going to show you guys how to calculate or find the equation of the regression line in JMP. And as always, we've got to open a data set first. We will be using from our lecture notes the example on correlation. This dealt with the temperature for 7 days in degrees Fahrenheit, as well as the number of emergency calls for that city or town. We already talked about how to do the scatter plot, looking at the relationship between these two variables, but now we're going to be interested in identifying the regression line if we believe that relationship is linear. Alright, so in order to do this, what you do is you go to Analyze and you choose the Fit Y by X option. Alright, now when you do this, it is critical that you know for sure which is the explanatory and which is the response. And since we think that temperature explains the number of phone calls, emergency calls, temperature will be our X variable or the explanatory variable, and then the number of calls would be the response variable. Alright, so once you put calls into the Y where it says response and temperature, into X where it says factor, go ahead and select OK. What this will do, the only output you see is the scatter plot. And by the way, this is an acceptable way to generate a scatter plot, similar to what we did in the last example, but it's a little bit quicker, I think. But nonetheless, this will give us the scatter plot. If we want to find the regression line, remember that in JMP, these options are hidden under these little red down triangles. So if you go ahead and select that triangle, it'll bring up a bunch of options. The only one that we're going to be dealing with at this time is if you go to Fit Line. Okay, so that will do a couple of things for you. Notice that it puts the regression line onto the scatter plot, so we now have a visual image of what that regression line will look like. And JMP is kind of nice because they actually will tell you what the regression line is. It tells us that calls, which is our Y variable, is negative 7.54 plus roughly 0.19 times the temperature. So it actually gives you the equation of the regression line. Realize that for an exam, I'm not going to give you that, but I want you to be able to find those numbers from the rest of the JMP output. So in order to do this, make sure you look at this carefully. The summary of fit will give you your R square value. It doesn't give you the correlation, but if you wanted the correlation from this, you could take the square root of this number. However, remember what R squared does. It tells us basically how well our model fits the data. And in this case, it's about 0.66 or 66%. So what that tells us is that 66% of the variation in the number of emergency calls is explained by using the model that we have. So it just gives you some way to assess how well this model fits. All right, the other stuff here, we don't really know too much of what this means at this time. We're not going to worry about that. But what I do want you to focus in on is this bottom portion where it tells you the parameter estimates. Ultimately, on an exam, this is what I'm likely to give you, and you need to figure out which is the slope and which is the y-intercept. And if you look at this carefully, here it will tell you intercept, and then it says in this column, this is the estimate. So you will notice that the estimate for the intercept is negative 7.54. And that's what you saw back in this equation that they spit out for you. Now, it won't say slope because it's going to mention your specific variable or variables if you had more than one. In this case, the X variable was temperature, so the estimate that goes along with temperature is roughly 0.19, and that's what you see in the equation. Here's temperature, here's the coefficient of that. Again, that comes from down here. The rest of this table, we don't really know what this stuff means at this time. We're not going to worry about it. We'll get to it later in the course, but definitely know how to find the estimates from this parameter estimates table and be able to write the equation of this line because you will not be given that. All right, that concludes this video. Thank you.